Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be talking about just the next set of G.I. Joe issues. We've got two issues in our set today. We've got issues 86 and 87 of the original, of the Marvel run. And yeah, just like basically every other issue of the Marvel run, they're written by Larry Hama, and I believe at least one of our issues today, our first issue is drawn by Marshall Rogers, who's been the semi-regular artist on the G.I. Joe comic at this time, and then the other one is drawn by somebody else, Tony Salmons. Yeah, Tony Salmons, Marshall Rogers. They draw the issues. First issue is Marshall Rogers. Second issue is Tony Salmons. And these two issues both released in 1988. As you can see, this issue as you might be able to see, I don't know if the glare might be going crazy right now. This issue is celebrating the 25th anniversary of G.I. Joe. Now, when I say G.I. Joe 25th anniversary, probably what jumps into your mind is the G.I. Joe 25th anniversary toy line, which are these action figures that I have on my shelf right behind me. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what this 25th anniversary was commemorating. Those 25th anniversary figures are celebrated the 25th anniversary of the G.I. Joe Real American Hero toy line. This 25th anniversary celebrated the 25th anniversary of G.I. Joe as a brand, which originated in 1963 with these like big kind of Barbie doll looking G.I. Joe toys. And yeah, those are not nearly as cool as the Real American Hero ones. But yeah, that's why this issue is marked all special and different. But yeah. So that's kind of the background for that issue. And then so honestly, the G.I. Joe comics at a really odd spot for this story. It kind of feels like everything around it is just spiraling. Like nothing of consequence is really happening in the G.I. Joe comics at this point. Stuff just kind of just happens. Like these two issues I actually think are pretty good. But like in the grand scheme of things, in the G.I. Joe comic, they are just flyover issues. Like they're alright, I guess, but they are good issues. They're good individual issues. But like nothing of consequence happens, and they're not really related to what's happened before. They're not really related to what happens next. It's interesting. Where these issues are kind of, these two issues and one issue before this are all kind of related, is that they're kind of chronicling the battle between Cobra and Destro. Destro as a character began as kind of this mercenary arms dealer ally of Cobra. But over the course of the comic, we've seen Destro kind of change into this more like nobler arms dealer. And when the original Cobra Commander died and Fred 7 took over, Destro stopped working with him. And that's kind of where the comics are right now. And Destro also just had some of his men, some of his Iron Grenadiers, impersonating Cobra Vipers when they did a robbery. If you want to see a video on that, you can check it out. It'll be in the link in the description. But yeah, Destro and Cobra Commander Cobra Commander's dead. Destro and Fred 7 are kind of rivals at this point. But yeah, it's just an interesting era. And then there is another issue that kind of goes along with this. That's this issue right here, all about Python Patrol. But this issue's so bad, like so beyond belief bad. The writing's bad and the art is terrible. that I just didn't even want to. I didn't even want to open it up and read it. This issue does have the first time you see Snake Eyes again after a while of him being absent from the comic. Maybe about 15 issues he was absent for the comic. So the last like 4 stories, I believe. And that's not all that long for a comic with a cast as big as G.I. Joe. But like in the last set of G.I. Joe comics we talked about with Zartan and Storm Shadow, feels like Snake Eye should have been in those, but again, that was last time's story. Today we're talking about these 2 issues, about Destro versus Cobra. So yeah, let's roll into it so I can give you my like long form thoughts without having to worry about like spoilers, I guess. All right, let's hop into our story, which opens on an Iron Grenadier trying to take out the G.I. Joe Tomahawk with a missile launcher. In the helicopter, we see Lady J doing some aggressive maneuvering to dodge the missile before returning fire with a Gatling gun, causing the Grenadiers to dive for cover, giving Stalker, Shockwave, Muskrat, Lightfoot, Hawk, and Repeater the opening they need to rappel down to the building the Grenadiers are holed up in, which we learn is a secret government institution. On the rooftop, we see that the Joes are greeted by a man, funnily enough, named Joe, who explains to the team that the building they are in houses a highly experimental laser satellite weapon. We then learn that the installation they are in is built on top of two extra floors, a dead floor, which is just like an empty area, which is being guarded by DOA agents, and a floor with all the computers for the project stored in it. So there's like the laser controls, the computers, dead floor. So yeah, and everything is separated by 2-foot thick doors, like doors down and doors room to room. We then cut down to the Grenadiers who are blasting through the DOA agents, and we also see that they're in communication with some type of supervisor who is observing the operation from a nearby building. The Joes are then led to the computer room, which is at kind of a bottleneck, obviously being right above the dead floor. And upon a closer inspection by Lightfoot, we learn that the doors are not that secure against large explosive blasts. Downstairs, we see the Grenadiers setting up a special type of explosive with a water dam to kind of bounce back all the force into the door. And we then cut back upstairs where the Joes are getting ready, planning to use the computer room as a bottleneck, keeping the Grenadiers from making it up to where the experimental hardware is, up to where the controls are. We then see the Grenadiers blow the door open, and shots start flying, with some of the Joes taking fire. But things go from bad to worse as one of the Grenadiers busts out riot gas, smoking out the Joes. And as the Joes retreat to their last line of defense, they notice that the Grenadiers are using Cobra equipment. The Joes then get a call from Lady J letting them know that something small and fast just came through her radar zone in the Tomahawk. Joe then pieces it all together and realizes that the Grenadiers aren't after the hardware but the program discs, which have just been locked in the computer room with the Grenadiers. We then got to the computer room where we see the Grenadiers taking off their armor to reveal their Cobra gear, because they've been Cobra agents this whole time, as they seal the Joes into the last room of the installation. We then see Firefly, the field leader of the operation, hang a bag with the discs in it out of a window to be picked up by a drone, which was the blip on Lady J's radar earlier. We then see Joe and the Joes rappelling down the building to flank the Cobras. We then see that the drone is flying to the supervisor we saw earlier, who was Fred 7, the guy impersonating Cobra Commander. In the building, we see the Cobras building gyrocopters to make their escape, and by the time the Joes make it back up the stairs, we see that most of the Cobras have gotten out. The Joes then head upstairs, and Joe has Jane, the female doctor who you've probably seen in the background a couple of times, and Jane targets the drone with the laser weapon and destroys it just before it reaches Shred 7. We then see Hawk offer Joe an honorary G.I. Joe membership, but Joe lets Hawk know that he was that he was actually the first ever G.I. Joe, which, fun, interesting. We then cut to a later time, and we cut halfway across the world to Scotland, where we see Destro and Baroness are surveying the land around Destro's castle. And they see a trailer park, a group of gypsies, and a carnival are all setting up near the castle grounds. We also learn that Destro has moved all of his tanks, all his heavy armor, out of the castle so it doesn't get locked in the event of an attack. But the armor has been moved subtly, so we don't really know where it is. We then cut away to the boonies, where we see Flint and Sneak Peek are observing the situation at the castle. Next we jump to the carnival, where we see that the carnies are almost ready, are getting ready, and we see Shockwave and find some proof that the gypsies are really cobras in disguise. Back in the castle, we see Baroness developing some close-up photos of one of the trailers at the center of the park, which has some very odd attachments on it. So now Destro is very suspicious. We then cut into that very same trailer, where we see Fred 7 is holed up, and he calls the troops to charge Castle Destro. We then see maggot tanks begin rolling out of the trailers towards the castle, before we cut back to the Joes, who we see are nesting in a spot in a covered ditch, but a maggot rolls right on top of them basically, before it starts raining shells down on the castle. Inside the castle, Destro has his mortars return fire, and he is quickly able to find the range of the tanks. We then cut to the gypsies, who are really Crimson Guardsmen, and they roll in with a group of Fang helicopters so they can siege the castle. Tomax and Zaymont, the Crimson Guard commanders, are able to pass the first wall of the castle and drop the drawbridge, giving the Cobra armor the opportunity to roll into the castle. But Destro has his whole crew fly out towards the command center. The Cobras on the ground figure out where Destro's going, and they try to turn around to defend Fred, but Destro has his tanks roll out and start taking down the Cobra battalions. At the command center, we see Destro come busting in, cornering Fred, and before entering business talks with them. And it ends with Cobra and Destro becoming allies once again. And yeah, and that's the story. Those two issues. That's really it. Yeah, it's just an odd one. The first issue is really good. The issue in the satellite installation building, that's a really good issue. I really like it. I have my 25th anniversary figure reprint hanging with it, and that was a really cool reprint because it came with two action figures. It came with a Viper and with an Iron Grenadier. So that's a comic I genuinely have a lot of nostalgia for, but it also helps that it's pretty good. It's a fun, very actiony issue. It's one of the few times you actually get to see the Joes win in this kind of second era of G.I. Joe. It's one of the few times you actually see them win, which is always nice. I like seeing the good guys win. But yeah, so G.I. Joe. So yeah. The first part of the story is very nice. Then you get into the second part. In the second part of the story, you'll notice that I halfway through I just stopped mentioning the Joes. It's because they don't do anything in the entire issue. They do in this issue with Destro and his air chariot on the cover. The Joes do nothing. They accomplish nothing. They're of no consequence. They're kind of just there, and that's fine, I guess. But you just didn't need them to be there. And yeah, I also don't like to me, Destro feels very out of character in this issue. Why does he just start working with Cobra Commander again? We don't really know. It seems like it's because he can leverage the fact that he knows that Fred 7 is not the original Cobra Commander. It seems like he's trying to leverage that, and that might be what happens. But I read the next issue. That's even if I'm not talking about it, that's not really where it goes in the story. That's not explicitly, at least. And yeah, it's a perfectly fine issue while you're reading it. And something that I like about both of these issues, actually, is they bring back some of those more classic Cobra side characters, like Tomax and Zaymot and Firefly and all them. I do like that they use them again, because they've been Firefly was in a couple of the issues semi-recently, but Tomax and Zaymot had been largely absent for quite a while. So it was a good, I think it was a good creative decision to have them in the issues, have them in this story. But again, it plays really weird having Destro kind of rejoin Cobra at the end of this story, because they just made a big deal about Destro not being in Cobra at the end of the Cobra Civil War. So yeah, I don't get why that's a creative decision that they made. And yeah, it's but again, issue to issue, these are perfectly fine. But yeah, once you kind of stop and look in on them a little bit more, it just gets to be for me, it gets a little bit of the hey, what's going on? Why is it like this? It doesn't help that the art's not very good, not great in these issues either. I actually don't mind Marshall Rogers' artwork at all. I believe this is the last issue of G.I. Joe he draws, actually. And I don't mind his artwork. I don't think he's the best. I think he's actually far from the best. A lot of times I find his artwork to be very very stiff. I'm sure you saw it throughout the video. You don't get dramatic angles. You don't get dynamic poses. You get a lot of people kind of standing there, a lot of side profiles or a lot of front-ons. But there's just not very much very dynamic art, which is perfect. It's fine, but it makes for a less exciting comic. And yeah, Marshall Rogers' artwork is very mediocre. He's pretty good at doing what he does. I just wish it was more dynamic, because his art reads as very stiff to me. But yeah, then we move into Tony Salmons. And Tony Salmons, his art just is a lot like Marshall Rogers' art, to me at least. Slightly more dynamic, but less overall skilled. Yeah, it's not great in this issue that I talked about, but Salmons also draws the next issue with Python Patrol. And like I said, I don't like this issue at all. It's one of my least favorite issues in the entire G.I. Joe comic. And we haven't gotten to them yet, but we will eventually get to some really rough comic books. But man, the artwork in this comic is just not good. And again, it's the same artist, Tony Salmons, but inked by I would say, a worse inker named Randy Emberlin. And yeah, and the artwork in this comic is just abysmal. I'll do this. It just looks so bad. Look at that. That just looks terrible. Hopefully you get a good view. But yeah, so G.I. Joe is kind of in a dark age right now for art, and like it's starting to feel like the wheels are just chugging, the wheels are just chugging on the writing. The art's been getting actively worse for the past 30 issues maybe. Like I think that every artist proceeding, like as the artists changed, they generally got worse. But like that's kind of a reductive way of saying that, but like the art's definitely been getting worse slowly. And I know that in the next set of G.I. Joe comics we're talking about, the art gets pretty good. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited to read those again. I'm excited to talk to you guys about them. But yeah, this story, it's fine, like it's a two-part story is dramatic. It's 2 single issues that kind of share a similar theme, and they're fine. The first one's really good. I actually strongly recommend reading the first one. I think it's a really good issue, and I think it's a lot of fun, which is something that is maybe the biggest thing the G.I. Joe comic was missing at this point in its history. So this issue really brought that funness to the comic, which was good. And then the second issue, less good, but also I would say also worth a read. It's definitely a transitional issue for the comic. You're getting into, hey, Destro's back with Cobra now, and it feels like a small little like reset moment where it's like, hey, all the kind of bad guy characters are together now. But yeah, that's really all I have for this video. That's really all I gotta say on this one. But I'm just another guy named James. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.